This program is brought to you by Pussy Magnets.
Put a midge on your friends with a pussy magnet.
Welcome, welcome, my lovely lumps. Or maybe let's go with lovely labs. That's pretty on brand. Anyway, I'm so thrilled to have you here in the Labia Lounge. We're going to be yarning about all things sexuality, intimacy, womanhood, relating, holistic health, and everything in between. We're going to have vag loads of real chats with real people about real shit. So buckle up because you're about to receive the sex ed that you never had and hopefully have a bit of a chuckle while you're at it. Before we get stuck in, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording this, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. It's a massive privilege to be living and creating dope podcast content in Naarm, and I just want to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Now, if you're ready, let's flap and do this.
Don't panic, you're not broken. Your sex education was a piece of shit. Get your flaps out and pull up the couch. It's the Labia Lounge.
Hey gang, just before we jump into this episode, I wanted to offer you an opportunity to access my new mini course for free before I start charging for it in future. It's for people with vulvas and it's quick to complete. It's all about demystifying the female body and pleasure anatomy and getting some basic fundamentals to understand your body better. It's called Pussy Pleasure Secrets, Your Roadmap to Bedroom Bliss. You can grab it on the freebies page of my website or in the show notes. It's a great little free resource to kind of dip your toe in or act as a bit of a taster for my work. So if you've ever been curious about this sort of thing and you just don't know where to start, or you want a really quick, easy, accessible, non-threatening way to get the ball rolling and start working on this stuff, this is a great place to start. Hello, my labial lovers. Welcome back to the lounge. Today we're going to be chatting about the bedroom gap, gender equality, and the impact on sex and intimacy in modern relating. So grab yourself a click cushion, get comfy. I've got Dr. Maria Sophocles.
You nailed it. You got it, Freya.
Oh my God. I usually forget to ask people how to pronounce their names and then I butcher it on the episode. And this time I did ask and I still forgot. Anyway, so Dr. Maria has been a leader in women's healthcare for nearly 30 years, specializing in menopause management and female sexual health. She founded Women's Healthcare of Princeton, a progressive gynecology practice, and has been a visiting professor and NIH researcher in Switzerland. A board-certified OBGYN and Menopause Society certified practitioner, she has pioneered innovative treatments including CO2 laser therapy for vaginal atrophy. Wow. She also serves as CMO of EMBR Labs, Director of Women's Health Services for Curia Health, and is an advocate for women's health policy. She is also an author and frequent media contributor on women's health topics, so perfect guest for this podcast. And her TED Talk, What Happens to Sex in Midlife, has garnered over 1.2 million views in total. She has a forthcoming book that's being released probably just before this episode comes out on Feb 10, The Bedroom Gap, and it's going to be, it will be available by the time this episode comes out, and I'll put all of the links in the show notes and everything like that. This is sort of one of the main topics of this episode, being the bedroom gap, which is a term that Maria coined. And she's currently also working on a documentary about sex, menopause, and gender equality called Hot. So, holy shit, that is some serious, you've been busy. Welcome.
Very busy, but loving what I'm doing, Freya. Loving what I'm doing.
Yeah, totally. Oh, wow. All right. Well, I'm excited to chat with you. I feel like we could jam on so many things, but first up, you coined the term the bedroom gap. I might have even seen somewhere, it's not in my notes here, but I might have seen somewhere that occurred on the Oprah show or to Oprah.
No, but
Oprah
Oprah recognized it. She said it's an official term, so I guess she's better than dictionaries now. So she made it one of her words of the week, and so I guess we're allowed to call it a real term. And also we're hearing that it's being used in psychology classes for graduate students and undergrads as a real concept. to teach
Wow.
issues with relationships that are of a sexual nature. So it seems to have sort of taken hold in the public, which is great. I love it because I think
Amazing.
it's a real thing, and I want people
Oh, yeah.
to feel there is a place for them if they're experiencing sexual difficulties in a relationship.
Yeah, 100%. And it's such a useful term to kind of describe. Well, we'll get into it actually. Like, what does the
Mhm.
bedroom gap describe? Why is it such an important framework for understanding intimacy, especially in like midlife and beyond? As I imagine the bedroom gap can get bigger as people come up against all different things like changes in the body and the hormones and,
Right.
libido discrepancy in long term relationships, all of this. And I suppose one other thing that I need to ask is it the same or different as the orgasm gap? Because I feel like that's a more well known topic,
Right.
term. And I have done an episode on the orgasm gap. My understanding is the bedroom gap is sort of even more all encompassing of a lot of the intersecting factors and nuances that contribute, right?
Right. I mean, the bedroom gap looks at the differences and expectations that we have sexually between men and women, or even between same-sex couples. But when partners have a differences in expectations and or abilities, they often can have an orgasm gap, but they also may have other gaps in arousal, in libido, in satisfaction, in
Mm.
in how they perceive themselves as a sexual being. So the bedroom gap encompasses all of that. And it really looks at the forces that shape who we are sexually, how we define ourselves, and how we bring that into the bedroom. For example, history, right? For 4,000 years at least, sex has really been for men, not for women, for male pleasure overall, not exclusively. Sex has been sometimes a commodity. Women have been bought and sold to be used for sexual pleasure for men. And the book is not at all a crap on men kind of tome or anything like that. It's just to help men and women understand some of the shame that women feel when they can't orgasm, or when they can't get wet and the vagina is dry, or when they have pain with sex. So many women feel shame because they feel like they're failing something they're supposed to be enjoying, or pretending to enjoy. And I wanted to unpack that for men and women. I want men to read this book too. I cannot tell you how many women who have read it have said, "Oh my God, men have to read this because it explains what I feel, why I feel shame about this, why I feel like it's me that's broken, and why I have to have libido for him or for my partner." So it looks at the forces that shape how we come to have these definitions of who we are sexually. Like I mentioned, history, culture, pharma, what's available for men with erectile dysfunction that isn't available for women. Porn, porn has become literally ubiquitous. It's available easily to pretty much any human being with internet connectivity. Men and women see porn at much younger ages as boys and girls, and this can really impact what they believe to be sexual norms, when you and I know that sometimes porn can vastly misrepresent the norm, specifically penis and vagina sex culminating in orgasm for a woman. And so when porn is our sex teacher, it's not crazy that we begin a sex life and maybe continue it for decades thinking, well, that's just the norm. Women have an orgasm after 6 seconds, standing up fully clothed. And that's just like, I'm sorry, but that's just not really, you're in for a big disappointment. So it's a lot of unpacking the sources of what lead to the women coming into my office and for the last 30 years saying something's wrong with me, but I'm 38 or I'm 57 and I'm just not interested at all. I think our hyper triple booked society is also a problem when women get into bed and men get into bed and they're just exhausted because they've been jamming all day in the name of productivity. It's really no wonder, Freya, that pleasure isn't top of their mind. So people also will come to me and say, I don't know how I'm supposed to prioritize sex when I'm so exhausted every day. So we unpack a lot of that in the book. It's a lot of how come and a lot of how to help yourself reset your mind, reclaim pleasure for yourself, but also how come, where did these problems come from? And what has internet dating done to this whole mess? And how do you recover from infidelity? And how do you have comfortable sex if you're handicapped or have a chronic illness? I mean, the book hits so many different things. But
Wow.
yeah,
That's incredible. I think it's so valuable to have the how come and then the how to. I'd love to focus a little bit on the how come first because it's so validating, I think, and so, reassuring to actually hear some of these contributing factors because, as you said, and as I experience in my work as well, so often it's the woman that's coming in and going, I'm broken, I'm malfunctioning, what's wrong with me? Something's not, working and I need to be fixed. I'm
yeah,
not able to provide for my partner or do my duty as a wife or I can't get wet or I've got pain during sex or I have no
right.
libido and they're like, what's wrong with me? So I think like talking about some of these factors that contribute to the bedroom gap is really validating and important as like a first step. And you kind of reeled off a few pretty major things that contribute, but maybe
Yeah.
let's be even more explicit. Like, what are the main, I guess, categories or pillars, like, in terms of biological, cultural, relational, systemic, like, it's just a gigantic
It's
topic,
a
but if you
gigantic topic.
could,
Yeah.
if you could kind of
Yeah.
nutshell it for us, or
Well,
yeah.
we could start with biological is a great place to start. And in the book, I break it into sort of anatomic, like what happens anatomically to us as we age. But by the way, this is a great book for people in their 20s and their 30s to read
Mm.
to understand the lifespan of our sexual lifespan and our anatomic lifespan and what happens in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. But obviously, menopause is a big one, right? When we lose estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, we get a breakdown of collagen, we get a loss of blood vessels, we get loss of nerve endings around the clitoris, and actual shrinkage of the clitoris, constriction of the opening, real things that can, in some cases, lead to pain. And when you have pain with sex, it's not crazy to then make the connection to you don't have interest in it. Why would you want to do something that's painful? But we also have, as I mentioned, a society that does not prioritize sex. It doesn't prioritize pleasure or even fun.
Mm-hmm.
It does in little bits, but if it prioritized pleasure and pleasure from sex, then I think people would make the time for it. They would make sure they worked at it just like you work at losing weight or maintaining your body or having exercise. We say I go to the gym every day from 7:30 to 8:30, and if you really do that and put that in your calendar, that means it's important to you. If you say, well, I would exercise, but I just don't have time, that means you haven't prioritized it. And I think we need to think of sex as one of the pillars of health because we know that an active sex life is linked to less depression, less feelings of isolation, lower blood pressure. So it's kind of about looking at those pillars, like you mentioned, biological, social, cultural. Sex is a social thing. I mean, you can certainly have self-love and self-pleasure, and I'm totally, supportive of that. But we know as people age, well, really age, right? When they're in their 70s, their 80s, their 90s, life can become extremely lonely if you're partnered, either if you have self pleasure and you're comfortable doing it, or you have partnered sex, you tend to have less depression and less feelings of loneliness. And I would imagine that holds true for people of any age. People who have a sex partner have a way to express connection, intimacy, and a break from our screen heavy, screen addicted kind of lives.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of obvious, I guess, but those are certainly some of the factors and the influences on I think having a bedroom gap is how society has made us feel sex should be. And if it's not like that for us, we feel we've failed.
Yeah, and something that I talk about a lot is that the blueprint for sexuality that we've been handed down is very phallocentric, very patriarchal,
Mhm.
very much based on a man's body as the default or the baseline. And so, of course, if
Absolutely.
we're measuring ourselves according to that blueprint or trying to fit into those sexual scripts as a woman, we're going to, of course, feel broken and as though there's something
We're
wrong
going to
with us because
fail.
those
Or,
scripts
yeah.
are designed for male pleasure and penis pleasure. It's, when you mentioned that we live in a pretty like pleasure negative society that's not actively encouraging, pleasure, I would argue that it's not actively encouraging pleasure for women in
For
particular
women.
and the type
Right.
of
Not
pleasure that
equally. Yeah.
we require, the relaxed, calm, like it's a very hustle culture, busyness, productivity, and male centric pleasure, which is pretty wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Like they take it, they deserve it, they're entitled to it. That's how men get taught about their pleasure. Sexual gratification is their fucking birthright because they have a penis. Whereas for women, it's really a totally different message. Anything to do with pleasure or self-care, relaxation, slowness, it's totally like vilified as like selfish, indulgent, lazy, unnecessary
Right.
luxury. Our pleasure is a total bonus if it happens at all. So I think
Right.
that
And I
this like
think I
gender
think Hollywood
inequality.
and the media has not served us well, right? Where pleasure and porn too. There,
Oh my God.
most porn is filmed, paid for by men, run by men, directed by
Mhm.
men, filmed through the male gaze. Um, female pleasure is always secondary, almost always
Yeah.
secondary.
Yeah.
And
Um, and you frame the bedroom gap as a gender equality issue. How does
Mhm.
like this sort of, and also like the burden of fixing, quote unquote, fixing the bedroom gap usually falls on women as well, right? Any kind of mental or
Right.
emotional labor.
If you look at the cover of the book, it's a bed that has been ripped apart, and what is sewing it together are flowers, which is just a proxy, I suppose, for something a woman might do, is
Yeah.
use flowers to kind of mend or repair the bedroom. And I don't mean that in a let's crap on men sense. I mean it in a sense that I want women to read this book and to understand they actually do have agency over a more intimate and connected sex life and a more balanced sex life. But just because they didn't learn that in sex ed class or from Sunday school or a teacher or their mother or their aunt or their friend doesn't mean they can't learn it now. And you can learn it at any age. You can learn that sex can involve mutual pleasure, that your pleasure can be prioritized. And I think what women also have to learn is that if your partner is not a great lover, that doesn't mean that's the end of it. It's never going to get better. It means you can own that yourself. You can learn your body. You can learn what pleasure feels like to you, what feels good to you, and you can learn to communicate it. 2 steps: learn yourself, learn your anatomy, learn what pleases you. And then the second is, even if you have to practice in a mirror, you practice saying, hey, that time last week when we did this or that, da, 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 I really loved that. And I'd really like to have more of that in our sex life. That's probably a better thing to say than, last week really sucked and I don't want to do that again. But if you have to, I guess you go there. I think always start with a compliment, always start with something positive, but somehow you have to make sure your needs are heard. And once you say it, it's easier to say it again and again without complaining. It can just be what I call a regular state of affairs, quarterly, monthly, weekly, whatever cadence works for you and your partner. And it can even be a turn on in and of itself. Most people feel really pleased and excited when their partner shows an interest in sex, in novelty, or in revisiting something that was good for them, or in complimenting you on something they did. Most people take that as, oh my gosh, this is great. We should do this more. Or even tell me what you like. I mean, hopefully. But remember, the human brain does crave novelty. And in long-term relationships, that can be a real problem, right? If if you're doing the same thing over and over, it's not just men who might seek a different partner, but women too. Women need novelty too. And that brings me to fantasy. I mean, that's part of the fun that gets sort of squished down in long-term relationships where they just routinely will do the same thing over and over, the same script. And, if you have fantasy, and most human beings do, it's wonderful to share it. No one's going to think you're a pervert. No one's going to think you're odd or strange. They're going to be excited that you're thinking about sex in the context of them. So I have to urge people to have a little courage, to do that, because some people, especially in long-term relationships, or in a new relationship, they feel like I can't share that, or he or she will think, I don't know what they'll think. Right.
Totally. Yeah. And I love that you're sort of talking about discovering and learning what you like so that you can then communicate that to a partner, because that's such a big part of the work that I do with clients. And also I have a whole online course that's basically teaching and encouraging, women and AFAB folk to do exactly that. Like there's frameworks in this course that help them figure out what they like. And then there's frameworks that help them figure out how to communicate that consistently with a partner, because these are some of the most challenging things for people. But I want to go back to the kind of way that, because I'm just sort of wary that I've done so many episodes on like these sorts of things, and I'm curious from your like research, how like speaking of the role of gender equality in this issue of the bedroom gap. What about like the healthcare system? How does like an inequitable healthcare system directly impact women's intimate lives? Because there's a really big gap. I know you touched upon it briefly, but let's talk a little bit about that. Hey, baby babes. Sorry to interrupt. I just had to pop my head into the lounge here and mention another virtual lounge that I'd love you to get around. It's the Labia Lounge Facebook group that I've created for listeners of the potty to mingle in. There you'll find extra bits and bobs like freebies, behind the scenes, or discounts for offerings from guests who have been interviewed on the podcast. There'll also be, hopefully, inspiring, thought-provoking conversations and support from a community of labial legends like yourself. My vision for this is that it becomes a really supportive, educational, and hilarious resource for you to have more access to me and a safe space to ask questions you can't ask anywhere else. So head over to the links in the show notes or look up the Labia Lounge group in Facebook, and I'll see you in there. And now, back to the episode.
Sure. So when we look, I'll start in the U.S., but I'll be in Australia too. So in the U.S. in the 90s, Viagra was launched, and it became the biggest drug launch in U.S. history. It made enormous amounts of money for the drug maker Pfizer, and it was rushed through the FDA at incredible speed. You would think it was the COVID vaccine. It was like, this is going to save millions of lives. Get this drug on the market right away. Yeah. And that's great. That's great. And it was able to offer help to men who had erectile dysfunction. But then it became marketed as something that anybody could use. Anybody with a penis could take this and have bigger, faster, harder, more prolonged erection. Great. I'm okay with that too. But the problem is it left women sort of behind. It created or widened the bedroom gap so that if you and I were a 60-year-old couple and we were kind of aging together, right? And we were either communicating or not, but understood that sex might need to be a little bit different now because one of us had a little bit of erectile issue and the other one maybe had some vaginal dryness. Maybe we talked about it. Maybe we reconfigured sex and did some other things. But once one partner has Viagra, that partner now wants sex more and more often. And that sort of left women literally and figuratively high and dry. And we didn't really, they looked at Viagra for women, but it didn't really work. Women don't need erection help, even though the clitoris does have its own erection. And so women just got sort of left out. And it wasn't until 2018, like almost 30 years later, that the first drug was approved for female sexual desire. And that drug took forever to get approved. And the FDA put the makers through hell to get it approved. And then it was only approved for premenopausal women. So it was like, okay, if you are still reproductive age and you really, really, really have a bad sexual dysfunction where your life is about to be over, then you can have this. But if you're just going through a rough patch, no, we won't prescribe it. It's like, wait, why the double standard? Why can any human with a penis go out and get Viagra on the street corner, basically, and have it be covered? But a woman has to prove that she's like in dire straits. It was so double standardy. And so that same medication, ADDYI, was actually not approved for menopausal women until December 15th, 25, 1 month ago, a month and a few days ago. Isn't that crazy?
Oh my God.
I know the drug company had to fight another, 7 years to convince the FDA that menopausal women actually do care about sex and want sex. Like we were just being left hung out to dry, literally. Like, why would you guys need anything for sex? Like you just sit around and knit baby booties and make cookies. It was like, I don't think so. I don't think so. So that's what I mean by it's part of the gendered health gap. It definitely is. And to say otherwise is just not to understand the difference in availability and coverage. In the US, we call it the pink tax. Things that are for women only are more expensive than things that are for men or for both men and women. And so it's, to me, fixing this bedroom gap leads to better health outcomes because as we said, better longevity, lower blood pressure, less depression, less anxiety, less loneliness. So better health outcomes. And it's a way to close the gendered healthcare gap, even in just a small sliver of healthcare. But it's not that small if you think about the fact that almost all humans have sex. And in this case, half of the humans on the planet are women and are sort of being inadequately pleasured, inadequately lubricated, inadequately vaginal regeneration of collagen and blood vessels. I think if there's 1 billion menopausal women on the planet right now, and say 80% of them have vaginal atrophy, that's a lot of women who right now globally are dealing with painful sex, and it's going undiagnosed and untalked about. So that's where I kind of link this to a healthcare gap. You know?
Yeah, 100%. And like even just the way women are treated in healthcare and how our pain is minimized and invalidated and we're gaslit, that ripples into the bedroom. Like if doctors don't care about whether we're in pain or not, then, their male counterparts in the bedroom probably aren't taking it as seriously. And as long as their dick's working, they're happy. But it can be really hard. I don't, if we're gaslit in the medical examination room about pain and there isn't a lot of
dryness
on women's
and
bodies,
interest, right?
Then we're going to be less likely to feel confident to speak up in the bedroom and be like, that's actually painful for me. We've been so conditioned and socialized to put our needs last and put male pleasure first. Like, there's a lot of women suffering in silence that probably feel quite hopeless and helpless. And then the worst thing of all is like when they do finally go to seek medical help, they're often just sort of dismissed.
So, oh my gosh, I have so many patients who come in day after day and say, my doctor told me it's totally normal for me not to care about sex anymore. It's just part of aging. It's just my age. That is so dismissive. It's also totally normal to eventually get cancer for some people, but that doesn't mean we should dismiss it. We don't dismiss it. Right? It's totally a normal thing to have heart disease and a heart attack. But that doesn't mean if you have high cholesterol, I should say, don't worry about it. If you get a heart attack, hey, lots of people do. I mean, you would walk straight out of my office if I said that to you. You'd say, worst doctor ever. And yet we do that to women, right? If I'm a smoker, and a doctor tells me, somebody's got to get lung cancer. I mean, you would fire that doctor, right?
Yeah.
So it's not okay to say, or to say, why don't you have a couple glasses of wine? It'll loosen you up. That
Oh
is
my God.
so, I mean, if I hear that one more time from a doctor,
Seriously.
I mean, my favorite was this doctor who, my colleague was trying to teach him to take the time to ask women, are you sexually active and is it comfortable? It takes what, 5 seconds to say that. And he said, oh, I don't have the time for that. And she said, hold on, it only takes 5 seconds. You got to say it because you have to break the ice so women feel they can talk to you. And he turned to her and he said, look, I can't even get my wife to be interested in sex. I'm not going to be able to get my patients to be interested in sex. And she just like wanted to cry. She just thought, okay, you're bringing your own bedroom gap into the exam room and assuming it's impossible to close. So I think we have a long way to go to convince
Yeah.
male and female doctors that this is part of a woman's health. Sexual health is human health. It is part of human health. And one of the best things you can do for a long-term partner to ensure longevity and health span is to make sure there's sex span. Make sure the sexually active part of your life is healthy, has communication, and continues. So I mean, I don't, that's how I feel. It's just linked to our health. And we're crazy if we accept the bullshit that a lot of clinicians dismiss us with, which is, you know, we all get older. Menopause is just part of life. It's a normal chapter. You know, well, erectile dysfunction is something that happens very commonly, but nobody tells men, who cares? Let your dick be limp, whatever. You know, can you imagine saying that to a man in a urology office? They'd walk right out the door. They'd be like, sorry, you, that is not acceptable. I came here for help. And women come for help and are dismissed routinely. So I think we need to change medical education so doctors are trained and nurse practitioners are trained to think this is valuable. It's valuable enough that I should preemptively ask about it. 69% of women have never spoken with a clinician about a sexual issue. And 20% of women say they never would. They would never talk to anyone about a sexual issue because culturally they've been told, shh, don't talk. Good girls don't talk about that stuff. You know, suffer in silence. And so we've got some serious medical education to turn around. In America, anyway, we have major sex ed to turn around. 47 of our 50 states do not teach progressive sex ed about LGBTQ issues. What do trans people experience as issues? Like, how about minorities? How about cultural differences? Don't teach any of that in most of the states. They're teaching abstinence. Can you believe that? Abstinence.
Holy shit.
Yeah. What century are we in,
I
Freya? What century are we
know.
in? So, and in the
Oh my
states where they teach abstinence and the states where they teach, like, you should go, you know, your church should be who teaches you sex ed and stuff. Those are the highest rates of unplanned pregnancies and undesired pregnancies, highest abortion rates in our country. So we've got to flip this around. It's not even just to have great sex. You know, I want everybody to have great sex. It's about stopping unplanned pregnancies. It's about letting women have agency in a clinician's office. I mean, if you can't speak your mind and learn something there, where are you going to learn something? Right? Well, on this podcast, of course.
Yeah. God, it's such a sorry state of affairs, isn't it? It's definitely better in Australia, but not that much better, really.
Really.
It's a fucking shit show, and like medical system wise, same deal. All of that's all happening here. The gaslighting and minimizing of
Yeah.
women's challenges, and and
Do you
also
know
just
this?
this sort of.
So sorry, I was going to say, do you know the story of the kind of aha moment that made me write this book?
Oh
Was
no, tell.
Well, I bumped into Gloria Steinem, the famous feminist goddess, in a coat closet of an after party after seeing a film premiere about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the famous Supreme Court justice. And she was there. And I thought she was going to be like, leave me alone. Like everyone was getting selfies with her. And I thought she would just want to get the hell out of there. And we're getting our coats. And she's like, well, who are you? What's your story? You know, or something like that. And I was like, well, I'm a gynecologist. And I think it's really important that women enjoy sexual pleasure and they're not. It really pisses me off. And she was like, you're right. She's like, that's ridiculous. She's like, and this was when Trump was first elected. And she said, well, how are we supposed to teach women to value sex when our own president is out there grabbing pussies? She was angry. Like, she got angry right away. And I said, well, I've actually started writing a book about it and about this thing. I call it the bedroom gap. And she just said, Maria, you better write that goddamn book. And she said, you write it right now. She was like angry with me almost. Like, she's like, this is not acceptable and this has to change. And you have to write this book because people have to start feeling empowered. And I was so blown away because she's not a young woman anymore, that this woman in her late 80s is like fiery and still feels that this is about women's rights. It's really not just about let's have fun. It's actually we have the right to sexual pleasure. And I think that was the first time I really felt that it was an imperative, that this was actually bigger than just, gosh, I hope women can have orgasms. It's like, no, I hope women and their sexual health can be part of human health, and women can take this as a basic right.
Yes,
so that was the story. That was the story of what made me say, okay, I got to go write this,
I love
Yeah.
that. Holy shit. And have you sent her a copy? Have you told her?
Well, it's really funny you said that, because I wrote to her assistant and said, hey, I'd love her to have a copy or, write a blurb for it. And her assistant was like, oh, no, she's really busy. And I thought, so I think I'm going to send her one anyway and just show her the page where I tell that story and be like, you are in here and you are the cause for this book. And I think I'm hopeful she will be like, oh, cool. Yes. Yay.
Surely. Yeah. You just send her a photo of the actual page as well and just somehow get it in front of her eyeballs.
Good thinking. I love that, Freya. I think you need to come over. We need to march up to her apartment in New York and be like, you've got to read this. I do think she'd be really happy with the book.
Yeah,
and also,
she absolutely would.
Yeah. And actually the book inspired a TED Talk. So there's even a TED Talk about the bedroom gap, as you mentioned. And then this documentary is really a spin out of it too. So it's kind of all the same theme, that we just really want women to feel free to advocate for sexual pleasure and for better communication with their partners about what they like, what they want, what feels good. This should be basic stuff, right? But
right. I know. Oh my God. Well, I love that. And please let me know, let us all know if she does get back to you and you do manage to get that in front of her. Very fucking cool. Let's do the segment Get Pregnant and Die. And this is where I just ask my guests for an anecdote about their sex ed. I mean, you kind of already talked about some sex ed going on in the States. Do you have a personal experience that you would feel like sharing?
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. Don't have sex in the missionary position. Don't have sex standing up. Just don't do it. Promise?
I could share personal, but a kind of funny one comes to mind. About 25 years ago, so I don't deliver babies anymore, but when I was doing more baby delivering, a couple came to see me, and they had just moved to the States from Japan. And they were very shy and very awkward, and they wanted to try to have a baby, and they were infertile. And so they came and they had looked up the word for infertility in English and kind of showed me. And I said, oh, infertility. Okay. And they were just saying that they just couldn't get pregnant. They couldn't get pregnant. And they were trying and trying and trying. And
they probably weren't even having penetrative sex, were they?
Exactly. There was no penetration. All clothes were on. There was actually like neck to toes pajamas, had no penetration.
What were they doing? Just kissing and...
oh my God, I don't remember. But, it was the easiest infertility consultation I've ever get. And they thought I was a genius because I told them about this thing called penetration and orgasm. And they were like in shock. And they were in their late 30s. They were in their late 30s, both virgins. Two investment bankers who had moved to New York to be investment bankers, but trying to have a baby, and no one had ever told them about penetration or ejaculation, and that was how the baby happened.
Oh my God.
I know. It was pretty much I was like their hero, and it was like almost embarrassingly easy. It was like, oh my God. So that was my get pregnant and die. This was a get pregnant and laugh, because of course they came to see me afterwards pregnant, and they were just all giggles, little giggles. So that was my get pregnant and laugh story.
Oh my
I
God.
thought that was cute.
I love that.
I
And it had a
know.
happy ending. That is
It
so
does.
insane to me though. Like at that point
I
there was
know.
definitely like the beginnings of the internet, right? At that time. Like how did
Let's
people
see. This
get
was
to
like
that age without
90s.
knowing? Yeah, okay.
90s, I
So
guess, but
yeah. Yeah.
still, believe me, I was in shock.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, where do I start? And how could this be? How could these people have lived this long and not know this? Like, have they never seen television, a movie, read a book? Like, they've just been studying and working, I think. Anyway, they came back pregnant
Wow.
and giggling. So I thought that was kind of that was my get pregnant and giggle story.
That's
Um,
awesome. Oh my God. All
yeah.
right. Well, that was a perfect one. That's great. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about I guess like what you see with couples. I imagine there's a lot of silence, avoidance, lack of communication, and then resentment starts to set in, things like that. What conversations should couples be having? And like, why do you think like, I feel like people are so unprepared for how sex changes as they age and as hormones change, and when stress starts to really impact
Yeah.
things, and life transitions and grief. And,
Yep.
it's like because we're not having these conversations and preparing and sort of tilling the soil of our sex life and communication and relationship from the beginning.
Right.
When stuff really becomes an issue, it's so far beyond the point of no return at that point that, they need
That's right.
professional help. So,
Or they don't get it and they just go like that.
excuse this quick interruption. I'm shamelessly seeking reviews and 5-star ratings for the potty because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, it's pretty fab. And the more people who get to hear it, the more people I can help with it. Reviews and ratings actually do make a big difference to this little independent podcaster. And it's really easy to just quickly show your support by taking that simple act of either leaving 5 stars for the show on Spotify, or even better, writing a written review and leaving 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts. Or if you're a real overachiever, you can do them both. That would be mad. If you're writing a review, though, just be sure to use G-rated words, because despite the fact that this is a podcast about sexuality, words like sex can be censored and your review won't make it through the gates. Lame. Anyway, I would personally recommend doing that right now while you remember, just to get on top of it and let me know you're with me on this journey. Thanks, gang. Enjoy the rest of the epi.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of couples, even if they don't split or divorce or infidelity, which all three of those happen, they will just come in and say, yeah, and they kind of play it down. Sex life could be better. And I say, well, how much sex are you having? Very little, like none. I'm like, well, how long has none been? Like weeks or months? 8 years. And you think, my God, they've let this go and let this go and let this go. And it really all comes down to communication. They never were able to have the first conversation. And so that's what you have to do, is find the courage and the practice, I guess, even if you have to practice alone or with a girlfriend or a guy friend, to how are you going to begin? How are you going to begin that first conversation? And I think that's what happens, is people just say, I can't talk about it. My patients, we literally practice it. We practice. I pretend I'm their partner, and I have them say to me what isn't right, and why they just don't want to have sex, or why they want to have sex, but they're frustrated that their partner turns away or won't discuss it. And I think that's huge. I think if I can get couples talking, then, yes, there may be menopausal issues, but no, the woman may not understand them, the man may not understand them, both may not understand. And sometimes just explaining that and explaining that there are things we can do is like a light bulb goes on. They're like, what? I thought this was the rest of my life. So there's simple stuff like that. It's also, what are the stressors? What are the stressors? Mother-in-law living with you, sick child who sleeps in your bed, work stress, financial stress, personal self-esteem, weight gain, all that stuff, or infidelity. Once there's been infidelity, it's very hard for some couples to go back. And so there's specific things to work on there for sure. Same with chronic illness, by the way. We were talking about a heart attack. I mean, someone who has a heart attack, they may want to have sex again to sort of prove to themselves, I can still do this, but their partner may be terrified. What if he or she has another heart attack? I've even had patients with cancer tell me, my husband doesn't want to touch me. He thinks it will make the cancer spread. And it's like, it's not going to make the cancer spread, So there's a lot of reasons for communication at any age. And it's never out of fashion. It's always, always helpful, even if it's awkward, I think.
Yeah. And also, like, even if you don't feel like it's necessary because there's no major fires to put out, just get into the habit of doing it early.
Right.
And also know that if you didn't do that, it's never too late and it's always beneficial. I've actually got a podcast episode about sex and cancer and illnesses and injuries. So the way that impacts, intimacy and the bedroom gap and how to navigate that, because that is something that, and I've got another episode about sex and disability, because at some point, one or both of your bodies is not going to be in shape to have sex how you always had sex. There's going to be illness, injury, maybe disability, maybe some sort of, it's just inevitable in a long-term relationship. So it's great to kind of, have some tools in your toolkit for navigating and communicating throughout those periods. What about
also to understand, Freya, that the disabled person or the chronically ill person, let's say the person who's had a heart attack or who's had a cancer and gone through radiation or chemo, that person may be feeling so broken and so unattractive. And sex may be a wonderful way to show them that you still find them attractive, you still desire them. You can say it, but nothing is as good as showing it. And so I would argue that if you're thinking you have to avoid it, this is a perfect opportunity to have a conversation about it and say, I don't know if you're ready to have sex again, but I am here for you when you are. We can take it as slow as you want, but I still find you very desirable and attractive, especially women who've had mastectomies or lumpectomies for breast cancer. They feel broken. They feel unattractive. They don't feel feminine sometimes, whether the nipple is spared or not. They just don't. And so that partner needs to know that it's something you should bring up, because guess what? Again, doctors often don't bring it up. I've had patients tell me, my oncologist said I'm just lucky to be alive and that's all that matters. And it's like, well, it does matter to be alive for sure, but it also matters the quality of life after your cancer, right? So if you're a partner or if you're a patient, have the conversation, have it. You can't move forward until you address the elephant in the room.
100%. And I guess I do hear of instances where a partner might stop being attracted to their partner after illness, injury, weight gain, aging. That does sometimes happen. It would be negligent to pretend that that's not a thing. But I also feel like if there's a lot of tending to the connection, intimacy, affection, non-sexual touch, maintenance of the emotional safety and connection and rapport in the relationship, then the physical attraction part is just not as important and won't have as much of an impact, right? Like, would you say?
Right. 100% agree. Yes, 100% agree that when there's playfulness, when there's room for humor and fantasy and joy and respect and intimacy, the physical attraction part is just one aspect, and I'd say most people get past it. Very few people say, I just can't. I can't. There's a little divot in her breast now, and I can't not look at it. And if you're that obsessive about one little thing, you could benefit from some therapy. And I think you're not a very respectful lover. And so, but people will assume, oh, my partner, that's probably all he sees is my scar. And the best thing is literally to put your hand on his or her hand and put it onto the scar and say, touch it, touch the scar. It's just me. It's just my body. And it's the new me. And it still is part of who I am. And, that person, that partner has to see the person as a whole person, not just as a loss of a breast or something. So you articulated it so beautifully, Freya. I won't try to duplicate it. You did a great job.
Thank you. And speaking of, affection and just sort of playfulness and things like that, I think sometimes, the challenge, one of the big challenges is like that we've been taught to see sex as penis in vagina. Penetrative sex, that's kind of the be all and end all, main course, blah, blah, blah. And I talk about this all the time on the podcast. But in a heterosexual or a male-female penis-vagina relationship, when penetration is no longer an option potentially because of any number of reasons, that can be a challenge because women have been taught that that is their duty to be able to provide that, and if they're not, then they're failing as a partner and a woman, and that the man's not going to be satisfied. Men have been taught that their penis is kind of the center of the show and needs to perform on cue, and they won't be masculine enough if they're not using their sword. And we often haven't really learnt a whole lot of skills around non-penetrative play and
that's right.
Just sort of enjoying arousal and sexual energy and touch and pleasure in a non-penetrative way. So how can couples renegotiate intimacy when penetration's no longer the center of sex? Is that something you talk to your clients about?
Of course, you have to, because some of my patients are people who've had, really disfiguring pelvic surgery, hysterectomies with radiation and things like that. And as much as I am a big fan of, let's use vaginal estrogen, let's use CO2 laser. I mean, I pioneered the CO2 laser. People come from all over to have me do it. And yet there are some women who the tissue is so destroyed, nothing is going in there ever again. And that's a hard thing to have to tell people. And I've had a lot of tears and a lot of people feeling like that's it, that's the end. So you really do have to, I guess, reframe it for them and really say, listen, you've grown up thinking sex equals PIV sex. Sex does not. Sex is this whole beautiful experience. And it's just a lot of teaching about how to use mindfulness, how to use erotic content from video, books, websites, apps to bring erotic content into your brain so your brain can be bathed in erotic information that inspires desire in you, how to learn about using massage, and whether it's tantric massage or Nuru massage or just Swedish massage to feel good, how to use masturbation in a way that you may not have thought before, like non-genital masturbation, how to go back. You could say go backwards. I don't. I say it's G-rated, like the old movie ratings in the US, G-rated, PG. And, we do a visit called the chocolate bar visit. And in that visit, I buy 2 very expensive, beautiful chocolate bars, the kind that are ridiculously priced, but they have beautiful paper and it's embossed, and there's always some beautiful font of the script and a scene or something like that. And I do it for a reason. And of course I buy 2. I used to buy 1 and let the patient do it. And then I was like, I really want some chocolate. So now I buy 2. So I get chocolate too. And we take our time. And we look at the cover and we feel the embossed lettering. We look at the colors. We feel the thickness of the paper, of the wrapping. We appreciate all the peripheral things that aren't the chocolate. We slowly slide the outside wrapping off. We look at the glossy bronze or gold or silver foil and we appreciate how beautiful it is. And we slowly unfold it. and we get to the chocolate eventually, but we don't eat it. We smell it. We look at the color. We see if we can feel the oil that's in it. We do a lot before we eat it. And the point is so that people understand to not miss all the peripheral sensations of a beautiful experience. And I use that as a teaching tool for people to not just think the goal is genital. The goal is human touch and smell and taste and all the senses. And so, this is nothing new for your listeners. I'm sure they've heard this, but we have to, in some cases, reteach that or teach it for the first time.
Totally.
I mean, I've had couples, I've had couples, I won't even tell you how old, who have had penis and vagina sex, missionary position every Friday night for 55 years. That's it. There has never been evolution. There has never been a question of doing anything else. The woman has just laid back and accepted it because that's what she was taught to do. And
oh my God.
I think, we grow as parents, we grow as friends, we grow as tennis players and swimmers and divers and musicians and artists in so many ways. And this is very human, right? To want to learn more about something that's in our lives. And yet for some people sexually, they're like, they just stop at what they know. And that was based on some porn film they saw 40 years ago. So I would say treat sex like you would treat anything else you do for fun and pleasure, any other hobby, any other pursuit, and develop it, evolve yourself sexually, whether it's reading books, watching movies. Porn gets a lot of shit for being degrading to women, and there is a lot that's degrading to women, no question. But the ubiquity of porn also serves us in terms of opening up our world of human sexual experience. So there is, if you can find the right things to watch, I suppose there is a wonderful world out there in which you can learn yourself, whether you're, again, 25, 45, 65, or 85. That doesn't mean there isn't room to grow sexually, I think.
That's so beautifully said. No, I totally agree. Incredible. Yeah. Inspo for people, and it's very aligned with my approach and what I try to encourage people to do when they're reframing what sex is and means to them and what it looks like in their relationship. What role does emotional attunement play in sustaining desire over time?
I mean, an enormous role. That's a kind of obvious one, right? Because if you're emotionally aligned with your partner, then you sense when they're having a good day, a bad day. You sense when they want more from you. You sense when they need just non-genital touch. You sense when they just need to be held. You sense when they really need the release of orgasm or multiple orgasm. And I think that variety and that sensitivity to that variety is one of the keys to maintaining a long-term sexual relationship. If we Esther Perel does a really nice TED Talk on a key to maintaining long-term sexual interest. And hers is actually much simpler than what I just said. It's actually just to make sure you still care about the person and that you still will climb into a bed and be skin to skin and let human skin feel human skin, whether it's hand, arm, leg, buttock, genital, whatever. And that basic human pleasure can really sustain us. I, with all due respect to her, because she is amazing, I do feel it's also what I was just saying to you, a sort of emotional attunement, really getting where your partner is on any given day or moment, so that you're not trying to sort of force sex when that's not what they need, and you're not just cuddling when that's not what they need. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think attunement is informed by really good communication. We're not mind readers. And it's harder to be attuned if we're not also gathering data by communicating with someone. So I think attunement grows. There's definitely some empathetic kind of intuitive attunement that people have within them, but you can develop and grow it, and you can calibrate to someone through communication.
Correct.
Yeah.
What do we say, right? Communication is lubrication. So
Yeah.
better
Exactly.
communication leads to better lubrication.
Exactly.
Hey, me again. If you'd like to support the potty and you've already given it 5 stars on whatever platform you're listening on, I want to mention that you can buy some really dope merch from the website and get yourself a Labia Lounge tote, tee, togs. Yep, you heard that right. I even have Labia Lounge bathers. Or a cute fanny pack if that'd blow your hair back. So if fashion isn't your passion, though, you can donate to my Buy Me a Coffee donation page, which is actually called Buy Me a Soy Chai Latte, because I'll be the first to admit I'm a bit of a Melbourne cafe tosser like that. And yes, that is my coffee order. You can do a once-off donation or an ongoing membership and sponsor me for as little as 3 fat ones a month. And I also offer one-on-one coaching and online courses that'll help you level up your sex life and relationship with yourself and others in a really big way. So every bit helps because it ain't cheap to put out a sweet podcast into the world every week out of my own pocket. So I will be undyingly grateful if you support me and my biz financially in any of these ways. And if you like, I'll even give you a mental BJ with my mind from the lounge itself. Saucy. And I'll pop the links in the show notes. Thank you. Later.
TMI, we love it. Said TMI, we love it.
It's not really a mic drop TMI. It's literally just a sweet patient who came to see me, who I've been her doctor for 19 years and done her hysterectomy and known her as someone having very kind, the kind that brings you cookies every year, like the sweet lady who goes to church every Sunday, never has any complaints. And she came to see me about a month ago. And I said, hey, yeah, you're not due for your checkup. What's going on? And she said, well, there's something I've just been dying to tell you in the 19 years I've known you. And I said, okay, go ahead. And she said, well, I've been married 62 years. And I said, okay. And she said, I have never, ever experienced sexual pleasure from my husband. He's absolutely awful at sex.
Oh my
He
God.
kind of pushes himself on me, thrusts, ejaculates, and falls asleep. That's it. Never, ever, ever asked me, never, ever did anything to me. And she said, and I want to experience pleasure before I die. And I'm 84 years old, and I'm coming to you because this is what I want, and I want you to help me get it. She said, I'm not about to die or anything, but I realized 84 years is long enough to wait, and I'm not waiting any longer. And we talked about, of course, she had not masturbated. She was taught in church never to do that. So we spent 2 hours together. I showed her all these sex toys. She was loving them. She bought a bunch of them. She learned masturbation. She was like an A student. And this one was 84 years old. Right? Isn't that a great TMI? And then she came back to see me a week or so ago. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you. I'm glad you're coming to follow up. How are the toys? Are you, using them? She's like, oh, yes. And I really orgasm and it's amazing. And, she was super pumped about the pleasure she had been able to find for herself, which literally I was almost in tears. I was like, I had a true lump in my throat for it. But then the TMI, the kind of mic drop was like, there's one other thing I have to tell you. And I was like, what's that? And she's like, well, there's a man at my church that has wanted me for like 20 years. And I've kind of wanted him too. And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to die someday. I love my husband, but I just need to know what sexual pleasure with a man is like. She's like, and I had the most spectacular sex with him. And she said, he knows how to pleasure me. I experienced pleasure from a man at 84. And honest to God, Freya, I almost cried. I was actually so happy for her, which sounds awful, right? Like I'm not advocating infidelity, but I didn't care. I was like, I don't care.
I'm happy
I don't
for
care
her.
about you. Oh, I know. Me too. Me too. I just, don't want your listeners to think I'm some sort of like, everybody go out and have an affair. But can you imagine at 84, she took it upon herself and she said, I've been watching your Instagram. my book is sitting in my office. So she'd been reading it and she was like, damn it, I want this for myself. I want this for myself. Anyway, I thought that was a cool TMI,
That is that's like one of my favorite TMIs ever. That is the best. I'm so pumped about this. Like, good on her. Go have more
Right.
affairs, Biddy. You got time
I
to make
know.
up for.
84,
Oh
84. I
my
was so
God.
proud of her. Yeah, I was super proud of her. So,
Whoa.
so she's kind of my little go get it yourself hero in a way,
Well, honestly, if she
Yeah.
can close the bedroom gap in her own actual marriage and get her husband up to speed on some like bedroom skills, that would be the ultimate testimony. Like,
Yes, stay tuned. I will let you know. But for now, I think she decided
yeah,
he's hopeless, not happening. I'm gonna do it
great.
myself. And then she
Yeah,
decided I'm gonna do it for myself with someone else. Like I was
get
like,
it.
whoa. So
Fuck
all
yeah,
right,
get it,
well,
girl.
I have to wrap this up, but I've so
Yeah.
enjoyed talking with you. Thank you so much for having me on. It's really been great.
Pleasure. It's been awesome. I'll pop all of your links in the show notes and be plugging your book left, right, and center. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today, Maria.
Thank you so much, Freya. I really appreciate it. And it is on Amazon. You
Oh,
guys can buy it on Amazon Australia, but it's a little weird. They're going to then on February 10th when it's out, they kind of cancel it and you have to reorder it. There, an Australian friend told me this, that be
okay.
prepared for some wacky cancellation and then reordering, and then they will ship it to you. So everybody be patient. It's coming to Australia. I promise. Promise, promise.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much. See ya. And that's it, darling hearts. Thanks for stopping by the Labia Lounge. Your bum groove in the couch will be right where you left it, just waiting for you to sink back in for some more double L action next time. If you'd be a dear and subscribe, share this episode, or leave a review on iTunes, then you can pat yourself on the snatch because that's a downright act of sex positive feminist activism. And you'd be supporting my vision to educate, empower, demystify, and destigmatize with this here podcast. I'm also always open to feedback, topic ideas that you'd love to hear covered, questions, or guest suggestions. So feel free to get in touch via my website or over on Insta. You can also send me in TMI stories to be shared anonymously on the pod. My handle is FreyaGraf_the Labia Lounge. If my account hasn't been deleted for being too sex positive, which, is always a possibility with censorship. But just in case the chronic censorship finally does obliterate my social channels, I'd highly recommend going and joining my mailing list and snagging yourself some fun freebies for the trouble at www.freyagraf.com/freebies. Anyway, later, labial legends. See you next time.